My name is Phil, and I have medically controlled post-traumatic epilepsy. I'm taking one more step towards living a fuller life by sailing the oceans of the world. Follow the Sail for Epilepsy voyage, and I invite you to consider, is there something you can do that you haven't done before with the necessary guardrails in place?
Good afternoon. Sorry for the little problems we've been having. Hopefully you can hear me now. If you can, maybe you can put a comment into Kimberly, let us know it's all working well. It is 4:10 local time in Ponta Delgada in the Azores. And I'm Phil Hayden. I'm president of Sail for Epilepsy. We're hanging out on the boat in Guay, waiting for a good weather window. We will thank you for sending in your questions. We'll answer them momentarily. But first, let me update you on what's been going on in the past week. As you followed our course across the Atlantic, our landfall was Fuerte, which is in the western side of the Azores. We stayed there from, I think, the 4th to the 15th. On the 15th, I had crew come in, and we had a very narrow opportunity to head to Portugal. We took the opportunity, knowing the forecast was not ideal. But anyone who knows me knows I have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Our plan B was at 7:30 a.m. local time the next day. If the weather forecast did not significantly improve, we would head southeast to Ponta Delgada, and that is what we did. So now we're sitting in the marina waiting. And before we go into the questions, let me just show you around a little. So you may hear the wind. We have about 30 knots of breeze coming in, and we're on the southern side of the island. Here we're looking out. Here is to the west. This is the marina. And this is the industrial part where we have commercial vessels. And it's quite impressive watching the crew bring these vessels in and turn them around in very narrow water. I'll get down in the shade of the wind in a moment, and hopefully things will be better for you to hear. So this is the local marina, the local town. And this morning, we went into the local town and we ordered breakfast from a fully Portuguese menu. We had no idea what we were getting. And I think we ended up accidentally ordering food, for at least 20 people. So I doubt we'll eat again today. So let's, at this point, start thinking about the questions. And if you have a question as we're speaking, please write it in the comment box and Kimberly can ask that question to me. So Kimberly, would you like to start with the first question, please?
Absolutely. So Susan from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, asks, what is the best treatment for epilepsy?
Yeah, Susan. So there is no best treatment for epilepsy in a general sense. It's very individualized, and one needs to work on what the treatment is for you as a person. When, we all say epilepsy, something to remember is it's not one disease, it's a spectrum of diseases, many different causes. So my epilepsy, for example, is caused by a head injury. There are other epilepsies, and actually I was talking to someone on the dock today who saw the Sail for Epilepsy flags, and he came up to me and he said, oh, when I was a kid, I had epilepsy, and he started discussing what his was caused by, and his was caused by a genetic mutation. So genetic mutations cause epilepsy through different mechanisms, and often when you have a different mechanism that causes your type of epilepsy, you may need a different drug. So without meaning to go into too much detail, 2/3 of people who have epilepsy become medically controlled, but the mechanism can be different types of drugs. I initially started on phenobarbital, then I was on dilantin or phenytoin. I now take valproic acid and Capra, and they really control my epilepsy well. Other people find that the medications don't work, and I know some people, for example, who've had to have surgery, and if they have a very focal piece of tissue that's causing the problem, and it's the right part of the brain, you can take it out, and the epilepsy is essentially cured overnight for some people, but it's not for everybody. Other people have electrical stimulation devices, and yet others actually have to work with a diet. And there's the ketogenic diet, which can work very well, especially for children. unless they get the desire to have a candy bar when they come off the ketogenic diet, and then they'll start having seizures again. So there is no one, shoe fits all. It's very important to work with your medical team and find what works for you. It's a little bit of a trial and error, I'm afraid. You take drugs for a while, and I remember when I was in my teens at home, taking some drugs, and they worked, but the side effects were so bad I was kept falling to sleep. So they had to do other drugs, and patience and careful monitoring. Kimberly?
Yeah, a couple of questions from Shay in Surrey, the UK. I'll ask them one at a time. They say, hi, if you've been diagnosed for 50 years, are you still taking medication? I think you're an inspiration. I love what you are doing.
Well, Shay, thank you very much for your comment. And there were times as we're doing this journey, I wonder whether we're actually an inspiration, whether we're helping people. So it's really nice to get the positive feedback. Yes, I'm still taking medication. And, this is it's an interesting question for me to decide what to do. So I've traveled around the world with my jobs. And every time I go to a different city, I end up with a different doctor. And the doctor might say to me, oh, Phil, you've been seizure-free for so long. You have a 90% chance, or some number like that, of being able to come off medication and not having a seizure. But the levels of medication I have are relatively low now, and I don't have side effects. So I've always discussed with the doctor whether to come off the medication, and I've chosen to stay on. What we do is we carefully monitor side effects. Some of the side effects, for example, can be damage to the liver. So every time I go to see the doctor, we measure the enzyme levels from my liver. So if there was getting liver damage, those levels would increase, and that would signal to us maybe we need to come off these medications. So I'm sort of very much, and this is also very individual, and you have to discuss with your doctor, and very much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I don't have the side effects, I'm not having seizures, so I am not coming off the medication. It's always an interesting discussion, and I think for any of you with epilepsy, having a very careful, considered conversation with your physician is what's important to do to decide whether to come off medication once you become medically controlled.
Shay also wanted to know what the colors and arrows on the map mean.
Oh, so I assume you're talking about on our tracker. So we have the boat position, I think, is a red dot, and you can see the line where we sailed. And then it's overlaid on colors and arrows or lines. And they're showing the strength of the wind. And if you think of this really like temperatures, so low temperature colors like a blue, all the way up to yellow, green, yellow, and the high temperature red, that is related to different strength of wind. So blue, cold would be low wind, yellow, green, intermediate wind, and red would be high wind. So it shows you when we're sailing, what is the wind strength as we're heading across the Atlantic Ocean. And then the lines or arrows are showing which direction the wind is coming from. And at the moment, I mean, we're stationary, but the tracker would be showing, if we were sailing, the winds would be coming down from the north, or maybe the northeast right now, as we're trying to head into the east. And I'll tell you now, the conditions out there are, to quote a good friend, sporty. We are predicting that at the moment we have 15 to 20 foot seas. That's nothing to be taken lightly. This is one of the reasons we decided to stay in port. And the winds are going to be 30 knots, that's 35 miles per hour, up to 40, 45 miles an hour. So we're tied up at the dock. We're using the opportunity to clean the boat and just try to relax before we head out next week.
Just a reminder, if you do have a question, if you're watching and have a question, please write it in the comments, and we'll be sure to ask Phil. Keith from Swindon, England writes, hi, Phil, your childhood next door neighbor here. I wondered how much influence your dearest mother had to inspire you after the incident that started your epilepsy. Godspeed on you on.
Oh, Keith, it's great to hear from you. I remember you very well. It's actually, I will answer your question, but I'm going to give a little background to everybody who's listening. So, Keith, the three brothers living in the house next to us, and my younger brother Dave, is on the boat with us. And actually, Dave's wife Sue lived 4 houses down the road from our home. It was this lovely little neighborhood where everybody knew one another, and everyone supported one another. I'll turn the question around. Is what did I do to my mother when I had this head injury? I say many times, I have no idea how my mom actually survived, because I had the head injury and I just wanted to get on and do things. And I am sure it aged her prematurely. But she was always there, being very supportive. I wanted to go out. I wanted to go out and play cricket. And some of you have heard me about the cricket story. I had no skull for about a 2-inch diameter piece of my head. I had no skull. And, cricket, like baseball, the American equivalent, could be a dangerous sport. But my mum and my dad found a way to allow me to play cricket. I had previously been a whitewater kayaker, and I had a protective helmet, like an ice hockey helmet. So they had it that I wore the ice hockey helmet. And in addition, we changed the rules of the game for other people who were playing with me as we went over to Keith, if you're listening, you'll remember the school playing fields very well that we all used to go over and play in. We played cricket there, and there were no fastballs allowed. So I think mum and dad were really inspirational in terms of enabling me to do things and not holding me back too much. I am sure it really, really aged them significantly. And I remember our days on Southwood Street Extension very fondly, and I really appreciate you contacting us, Keith, with your question.
Marnie from Vancouver, British Columbia, wants to know if you're looking for volunteers. She's a sailor and a registered nurse.
Oh, yeah, thanks for the question. So in terms of volunteers, the way we're trying to work with people is to ask you to spread the message. One thing that our local group is doing is we're trying to go out and educate people about epilepsy. In Horta, I managed to give 2 little presentations, one in PKA and the other at the local university. And many times, the majority of the people don't know about epilepsy. Go out and spread the word. Epilepsy, it's a disease, and 1 in 26 people will suffer with epilepsy in their lifetime. I gave a quiz actually at the beginning of my last presentation, and I had a slide and I said, how many people will suffer with epilepsy in their lifetime? And I had numbers 1 to 10,000, 1 to 1,000, 1 to 260, 1 in 26, and 1 in 10. I asked people to put up their hands. Half the audience put up their hands at 1 in 10,000. Essentially, the other half, all but 1 or 2, put up their hand to 1 in 1,000. 2 people put their hand up to 1 in 260, and nobody put their hand up at 1 in 26, and it's 1 in 26. The numbers are really quite high compared to the expectation of the population. Often people are hiding their epilepsy. Another thing you can do is to spread information about seizure first aid. We give out little postcards, and if you'd like any, we can send some to you, where it's, what do you want seizure first aid? And after I gave this little presentation in the university, I had several people come up to me and say, my parents always told me something totally different. And this is about, you should try to put something in between their teeth, like a wallet or a piece of wood. Oh, they're going to swallow their tongue. Never, ever, ever put something in somebody's mouth who's having a seizure. You're going to have one or two consequences. You're either going to damage them or you're going to damage yourself. And I do know of people who have had severe damage to their fingers because they've been trying to help them. Nobody's ever going to swallow their tongue when they have a seizure. It just does not happen. So one of the best ways you can volunteer is to spread the word. And if you want to have information, we have just pop a comment in the box to Kimberly or send an email, connect again through social media. And also, if you have questions, info@sailforepilepsy.org, I think is the address. Did I answer the question, Kimberly?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
you did.
Okay, thank you.
Randy from Massachusetts writes, Phil, I can tell a story about a Portuguese mother who thought her daughter was possessed. So much so she went to talk to a priest. She had obviously a seizure. My question is, do you get any sense of what the stigma is there at the Azores and as well as Portugal regarding epilepsy?
Yeah, a good question about, I've heard this about people, Randy, people feeling they're possessed. I know as we visit Morocco, this is a significant issue. That is generally what is thought to be happening. Someone is possessed, and the way you cure their epilepsy is you pour sugar water down their throat when they're having a seizure. Clearly not a recommended course. In terms of the stigma in the Azores, it's unclear, but when I was at the university, I was really impressed by how open everybody was in the audience. And we had about 50 people in the audience, and what they were asking questions. They wanted to know more about epilepsy, and they were really embracing the information. And maybe part of the answer to this is, we're not going to know if somebody, really has, one of these peculiar opinions. They may not express it, but the way we can help people overcome the problem is keep talking about it. And the more of you who are listening, who spread the word, hey, there's, people with epilepsy, 1 in 26 people. Don't put something in their mouth. We're just all normal people. It's going to help. Another thing I like to say in relation to this is I have a slight miswiring in my brain that causes something called epilepsy. There are other people who have slight dysfunction in their liver, which causes another disorder. Some people have a dysfunction in their kidney, which causes another disorder. They're just dysfunctions in different organs, and they just manifest differently. Epilepsy is no different than those other things. We just see it differently. Don't be scared of it. We're all normal people. And when people with epilepsy have a seizure, support us. It's something where we get very confused. We don't know what's happened, and we're not possessed. Maybe the only way we're possessed is to correct the truth and let people know what epilepsy is, and that we can all help one another. Thank you, Randy.
Michelle writes, how is Jim? We miss him at the Eddy.
Okay, so Jim is one of the crew members. Jim is from Boston. And Michelle, I actually read your question to Jim earlier on, and his response was, how are you enjoying your new apartment? Jim is doing well. We're all a little itchy sitting on a boat waiting to sail, but we have to keep our safety guardrails in place, which is what we use for that one more step. Before the next question, just as a brief reminder, I'm Phil. I'm from President Sail for Epilepsy. We're sitting in the Azores waiting for a weather window to head to Portugal. And here holding a question and answer session. If you have any questions, put them in the comment box, and I know that Kimberly sees them and then she passes them along to me. And Kimberly, what's next?
So Peter also wants to know how Jim is doing.
I can see Jim is definitely got a fan club back in the United States who's following along. And Peter, I assume, is the skipper of a boat called Uproar that Jim normally sails on. And Jim's doing very well. We have to hold him down a little bit as we wait to sail. But it's really great having such a knowledgeable sailor on board. And it's really fun when sailing with Jim. As you can see his eyes darting around. He's looking at every aspect of the boat. He's identifying potential issues, 300 miles down the road, and looking at ways that we can correct things. And it's really a pleasure to sail with such a knowledgeable sailor.
A question from Lisa, who wants to know, will you get some pasties de nata when you get to the mainland, which are apparently custard pastries?
So, did you say Lisa?
Lisa, yes.
Yeah. Lisa, without question. Actually, on the breakfast, my wife was with me in Horta, and she's flown back to the US now. And we managed to find two of them at a breakfast. And it was really quite incredible. We managed to fight our way and get those two and try them there. And it was lovely. I look forward to getting to the mainland, and I anticipate we will celebrate by going straight to a bakery and getting yet more. The last time I was in Portugal with Marianne, this is one of the favorite foods we found. So yes, no question.
That was actually the last question that we have today.
Well, there's some nice questions, and we really appreciate you all following along. Keep sending your messages in of support. What you may or may not know is Kimberly or Lauren, whoever's support at the time, is when we're offshore, they send to us your comments that you put on social media or in emails. Every night we get a list of the questions or comments that have come in, and then I write to Kimberly answers to comments, and then she'll post from me. So most days when the conditions permit, we will respond to your comments in the best way we can and let you know what's going on. So thank you all for your support of Sail for Epilepsy and your enthusiasm for our mission. And remember, as I said in our last seminar, 1 in 26 people have epilepsy, and we can overcome. Let's get rid of the stigma. Let's teach people seizure first aid, and let's live a full life. Remember, there's something called the One More Step Challenge. In this, we ask you to find a way that you can challenge yourself to live a fuller life. If you're a caregiver or a parent of someone with epilepsy, what can you do to help your child or the person you're caring for live a fuller life? And those one more steps are my inspiration. I listen to what people are doing, and if you keep following on social media, you'll see we have little shipmate features about people who take one more step challenges, and they are so moving. And I am so proud of all of our people who've taken the one more step challenge and are now virtual shipmates. We sail for you, and keep following, and hopefully we'll be heading off to sea in 2 to 3 days. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Kimberly, for sorting the technology out and getting us live.